In the early 3rd century, the Chinese Empire caved in. Less cultured but more vigorous tribes occupied the ancient heartland of the Central Kingdom. They forced the natives southward to build a new base in a potentially richer area. The great turmoil lasting 3.5 centuries created a new mix. The barbarians were absorbed by the Chinese, and the Chinese stimulated by the barbarians. Our story begins with the last days of the great Han Empire, the counterpart of Rome in the Far East. Out of the chaotic and factional warfare, surviving powers divided China into 3 kingdoms: Wei in the north, Shu Han in the west, and Wu in the east. Wei inherited the old political centers and the old ruling class. Its bureaucratic system of 9 grades fostered nepotism. The poor never made the upper grades, and the elite never fell into the lower grades. When a Wei general reunited China and named his dynasty Jin, the census figure was 16 million, compared to nearly 60 million in 2 AD. Even allowing for inaccuracy, the magnitude of decrease reflected severe decimation of the population in a century of incessant warfare. Not surprisingly, the emperor permitted non-Chinese tribes to move inside the Great Wall. The foreigners seized their opportunity when they were asked by Jin princes to help fight for the throne. A Xiongnu general sacked the Chinese capital and finished off the short Jin dynasty in the north. Thus, the traditional enemy, Xiongnu, whose empire was destroyed by the Chinese in the 1st century, now occupied the heartland of China. During the 4th century, 16 kingdoms of the 5 barbarians, at one time or another, carved their domain out of the northern area from Manchuria to Chinese Turkestan. These 5 barbarians were actually 3 major nomadic tribes. The Turkic Xiongnu, semi-Sinicized through long contact with the Chinese, and its less civilized branch, the Chia, the northeastern Tungusic tribe called Xianbei, and the Chang and Di, both Tibetan tribes from the western highlands. In the meantime, a member of the Jin royal clan retreated to the Yangtze Valley and created a fusion of the displaced great families from the north with local powers of the south. The new dynasty was known as Eastern Jin. In 439, the Northern Wei dynasty, founded by a branch of the Tungusic tribe called Toba, united North China, marking the beginning of the historical era known as the Northern and Southern Dynasties. The Topa people, originally hunters and herders, gathered wealth through looting others and making slaves out of captives. Slowly but reluctantly, they adopted Chinese culture and settled down to farm the land. After conquering the Yellow River Valley, the Topa emperor relied on Chinese talents for administration and honored Confucianism in order to strengthen his feudal rule. The northern outsiders brought into the Central Kingdom a foreign system of thought called Buddhism, which began to penetrate the ideological fortress of Confucianism. Though introduced in the 1st century, it did not gain momentum until now. At first, Central Asians served as missionaries. Some of them claimed magic powers and influenced northern rulers. Once the Buddhists won a decree to allow people to enter monkhood at will, many natives flocked to this sanctuary to escape from oppression and taxation. Now learned Chinese monks spread the Buddhist philosophy among intellectuals both north and south of the Yangtze River, and great translators of Indian scriptures helped to open up horizons beyond the Chinese imagination. The time called for a new type of explorer, whose quest was not for victory or profit, but for the truth of Buddha. The first famous monk pilgrim was Faxian, who left for India in 399 and traveled through Central Asia on the most important trade route at that time between China and the outside world. He returned after 15 years to translate sutras brought back from the home of Buddha. What is Buddhism? By coincidence, when Confucius was teaching the doctrine of human morality in the Yellow River Valley about 500 BC, Buddha, born a prince in India, was pondering the meaning of human existence at the southern foot of the Himalayas. Confucius tried to establish a code of human conduct for the making of an ideal state. Buddha searched for a release from the inevitable cycle of human suffering, birth, aging, illness, and death. Confucius, earthbound, concerned himself with humanity. Buddha, eyes heavenward, sought enlightenment. Buddha accepted the ancient Indian idea of karma, or deeds and acts, and the belief in reincarnation. To him, life is a constant stream of countless individuals going through endless rebirth, with every life the result of a former life, and every fate the effect of former good or evil deeds. To break this bondage, one must suppress desires, practice moral conduct, engage in deep contemplation, and achieve intuitive wisdom. The ultimate goal is nirvana, a state of absolute transcendence and eternal freedom from human existence. In China, the prevailing philosophy after the collapse of Han was Neo-Taoism. Scholars who had escaped the claws of tyranny sought mental, if not physical, refuge in endless transcendental dialogues, in the vein of Lao Tzu and Chuang-Tzu and the Book of Changes. They called these verbal exercises pure talk. Among the famous personages known as the Seven Sages of the Bamboo Groves, some indulged in wine, music, and poetry in the hope of attaining a state of non-being and oblivion. Their philosophy seemed in tune with the Buddhist ideal of nirvana, or emptiness. Although basically Buddhism was a moral faith and Neo-Taoism an amoral speculation. High monks, well-versed in pure talk, successfully persuaded many Neo-Taoists who in turn influenced the rich and powerful. It didn't take long for the streams of intellectual speculation to turn into a flood of popular faith. Neo-Taoism lost ground to Buddhism in religious thought, but gained a hold on literature and art. Many Neo-Taoist poets turned inward to converse with themselves, looking backward to express longing for the ancients, and seeking harmony with nature in mountains, rivers, farms, and gardens. The hermit poet Tao Chien sublimated unrelenting pessimism into peace of mind and love for simple, natural, and commonplace things. Considered the greatest Chinese calligrapher of all time, Wang Shizhi composed a classical essay on the occasion of a drinking party held at the Orchid Pavilion. He lamented the sorrow of the ages, but stressed the pleasure of the moment. The Chinese written language, always a medium for artistic expression, as well as a means of communication, attained aesthetic heights under his brush, which also succeeded in freeing the conventional forms for personal expression. Wang Shizhi's brushstrokes, lean and alive, have been compared to leaping dragons and crouching tigers. Ever since his time, calligraphy has become a major branch of Chinese visual art, rivaling, if not surpassing, painting in importance. A young contemporary, Gu Kaiju, though also talented in calligraphy and poetry, made his fame in painting. He excelled in all subjects: figures, landscapes, animals, flowers, religious portraits, and supernatural creatures. From this rare and early copy of his work, we can see his fine lines that have been described as free as floating threads, yet as strong as metal wires. He theorized that a good painting must begin with spirit in the heart and must be executed by hands that satisfy the eyes. This creative period also produced pure theoreticians who expounded the principles of art, evaluated the accomplishments of the past, and set sights for the future. As they saw it, the essence of painting is liveliness, breath, and rhythm. That of poetry, feeling and rhythmic flow. Spirit and ideas come before virtuosity and decorativeness. The greatest northern artistic accomplishments were in monumental Buddhist sculptures. Near the Northern Way capital, first the major Yungang images were cut from living rock in memory of early rulers. Other caves containing thousands of smaller Buddhas followed. Indian in concept and Central Asian in style, the figures had not yet gone through a complete evolution into Chinese forms. But when Northern Way moved its capital southward to Luoyang, the ancient Chinese political center, they built a new series of cave temples in which the Chinese style took over. Flowing draperies covered the anatomies of the images. Lines rather than volumes dominated the vision. Paralleling the artistic achievements was the progress in science and technology. The great inventor of the 3rd century was Ma Jun, who greatly improved this type of loom to weave silk of intricate patterns. He also refined the water-raising machinery, a kind of chain pump that could be operated even by small boys. His south-pointing carriage held on top of a vertical shaft a human figure who pointed his arm to the south no matter how the carriage was turned around. Executed through a series of gears, this design qualifies as the earliest cybernetic machine. A reconstruction made according to written records by a Chinese scientist looks like this. It indicates how the original machine might have worked. Another genius was Zhu Chungjie, who found the value of pi, or the ratio between the circumference and the diameter of a circle, to an accuracy equaled in the West only 1 millennium later. His new calendar gave the number of days in a tropical year as 365.2428148, a figure only some 50 seconds apart from our present calculation. Thus, the shattering of central rule and chaotic foreign occupation had a positive side, for the decaying Han civilization went through a vigorous process of rejuvenation. The Chinese absorbed considerable new foreign blood, Xiongnu, Tungus, and Tibetan. The new Chinese culture assimilated many foreign ideas, of which Buddhism was the single most significant import. It created new architecture, painting, and sculpture. Introduced new words and terms such as Yingu for cause and effect, or Lai Sheng for next life, and through the translation of sutras, brought to the Chinese ear a new sense of tonality which reshaped poetry. New music from India and Central Asia also enriched the Chinese vocabulary and filled the air. The Yangtze River Valley, inherently richer than the Yellow River Valley, benefited from the influx of refugees. Because the wealth and power of great families and Buddhist temples demanded the best from industry and commerce, technologies in iron, steel, paper, and ceramics made notable strides. Shut off from the north and the west, the Chinese looked to the east and south, and shipbuilding increased to prosper trade with Indochina, Ceylon, India, and other South Sea countries, mostly through the ports of Canton and Tonkin. Within 300 years, the South surpassed the North in economic growth. The two rival cultural traditions gradually merged into a new Chinese tradition, laying the foundation for the reunification of a China that would be greater and richer than the empires of Qin and Han.